Childbirth can be traumatic, and society loves to glamorize the shit out of having kids. But let's talk about it. I got 2 credentials here. The first thing is I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor. And the second thing is I have children. Now let's talk about how childbirth can be traumatic. The first thing I want to say is that before I had kids, my friends would be like, girl, once you have kids, yes, it hurts. Yes, it hurts. But once you have that baby, all that goes out the window. You see, they fail to emphasize hurt. They fail to emphasize what that experience is actually about. One of the things that I think about in my birthing story is that my mother, she's like, I'll never forget the burn. I'll never forget the burn. The thing is, I don't actually remember the pain from my birth. And I know now that is actually a defense mechanism for my traumatic experience from giving birth that my body is protecting me from. You see, that's the therapy. That is the therapist credential right there. But let's talk about my mothering credential. Back to the story. So I went into labor on a Thursday. I was sent home. I was actually in the birthing tub. And do you know, the nurses asked me to get out of the birthing tub because I was not progressing fast enough and they needed to use the birthing tub for another person. That is the first traumatic thing. The first thing is, would you have told a white woman that? That's a story for another day, but let's keep going. I then left the hospital because they said I needed to go home and progress before I came back. I came back the second time. I was in excruciating pain, but my cervix was not dilating. So they said, we are going to send you home once again, but this time we are going to give you a shot so that when you get home, you can actually rest and relax and your body can do what it is that it needs to do. The first thing is, when were you going to actually check and see what my pain threshold was? Because my pain threshold is actually much lower than a lot of other people that I think give birth. But that, again, is a story for another day. So they sent me home after giving me this shot. Do you know that shortly after receiving this shot, my husband could not actually make out what I was saying? My speech sounded very mumbled to him, which was very scary to me because it sounded like my sentences were coherent, but he couldn't understand what I was saying. So we rushed back to the hospital for the 3rd time. When I got there, they needed to give me an MRI while I was pregnant. So imagine being in a machine, laboring, and you cannot move. They then brought in a neuropsychologist because they could not understand what it is that I was saying. They had then decided that we need to give you, what is it when they induce? That's what they did. They induced me. They said that we needed to make your labor progress. After that, I then went on to push for three hours. My daughter being born was actually a relief for me because I knew at that moment the trauma was over and I was a survivor. And then I spent the next 4 years contemplating if I wanted another kid.
Story time about how I lied to my parents about having a boyfriend for 4 years. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. My parents are super strict. Growing up, I could not have any guy friends. I wasn't even allowed to go over to my girlfriends' houses. At school, I was pretty popular, and the fact that my parents didn't let me have any boyfriends made the boys actually want me more, which is something my dad actually hated. Boys would call our house asking to talk to me, and my dad would grill me about it. So I finally decided to tell him that because he doesn't let me date any boys, that boys want me more. He laughed and said that that wasn't true, and that most likely I was just provoking these boys. Obviously, this really upset me. My dad was always really controlling. When I turned 16, I decided I wanted to get my own job. This way I could have some more freedom and just meet more people outside of school. I started working at a local restaurant and quickly made friends with everyone who was working there. They were all pretty much my age, especially one boy. Let's call him Rick. Rick and I hit it off right away. I had a huge crush on him instantly, and I could tell that he liked me too. But of course, my strict parents were always present in my mind, so I tried my best to stay away from Rick just so that I wouldn't develop any feelings. Which I already had, who am I kidding? One day, Rick asked me if I wanted to take my break with him, and I said yes. He sat in his car for 30 minutes and just talked the entire time. I started falling in love with him. We talked so much, and he was so kind and so funny. The next few days at work, we were basically inseparable. Finally, at the end of the week, he asked me if I wanted to be his girlfriend, and I said yes. Without a moment of hesitation, I said yes, knowing that my parents would not want that at all. So here's when I told him that we needed to keep this a secret. He wanted to just speak to my parents, but I begged him not to. Thankfully, he understood. The only time we were able to spend together was at work. And we did this for a full year. When I turned 17, my parents insisted that I quit my job so that I could focus on school. I pretty much had to listen to them, so I did. This meant that Rick and I barely ever saw each other. Instead, I decided to sneak him into my house every single night. Part 2 is up. So I started sneaking my boyfriend into my room every single night. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sending me on Instagram. My parents had literally no idea. I snuck my boyfriend Rick into my room every single night for a full year. The only time we ever got close to getting caught, the smoke alarm in our house went off, and as soon as we heard it, Rick jumped out through my window. My room was on the first floor, so this wasn't really an issue at all. I finally graduated from high school and started going to college. It became way easier to hide my relationship from my parents because I was living in a dorm. Rick would come visit me every single weekend, and my parents would come to visit me every now and then. Even when I was in college, you guys, my parents were still super strict. So one day I decided to ask my dad when I could have a boyfriend. He said when I was living under my own roof and paying my own bills. So the following year, that's exactly what I did. I was able to get a good job in my field, and so did Rick. So we put our money together and his parents helped us to get an apartment. But here's the thing, I didn't want my parents to know that I had a boyfriend this whole time. So instead I told them that Rick was my roommate who I met in college, and that I finally just decided that I wanted my own freedom. My dad was really proud of me for taking the initiative, which was crazy to me. He said he was proud of me. My mom, on the other hand, definitely did not want me moving in with some guy. So I invited Rick over to my parents' house. They met him for a little bit and they actually liked him. Fast forward 6 years, Rick and I are married, and my parents don't know that he was my boyfriend for 4 years. They think that we started dating after we moved in together. I kind of want to tell my parents, but I'm not sure. I think they would get really, really upset and possibly not speak to me. What do you think I should do?
You guys, people are so dumb. Alright, so I have a story time, and it's honestly, it's just making me mad thinking about it. Just to clarify, I'm white. I don't know what it feels like to be discriminated because of the color of my skin. So I need you guys' opinion. Like, I need to know if I have a right to be mad at this. So my new man's, or whatever, is Guatemalan. He's a snack, just saying. But anyway, we go to this corner store, he gets coffee. We're just chilling, minding our own business, and this man walks in yelling. And at this point, he wasn't talking to anybody in particular, he was just like talking, speaking his mind. And basically what he was saying is that a girl, in which he called Mexican, locked her car door when he walked by because he was black. Then he proceeded to say very nasty things about people who are Mexican. But like, this isn't what made me mad. Like, that made me mad, but like, bro. So I wasn't standing next to my boy. Yeah, I've never called him my boyfriend before, but like, my boyfriend? Which I'm not sure if that really played a role in this situation, like whether or not I was standing next to him, but like, I feel like it does. I'll explain why in a second. But the guy that was yelling points to my my boyfriend and is like, your girlfriend's locking the car door because the color of my skin. She's I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not in no damn car. Like, his girlfriend who? Does he have another girlfriend that I don't know about? No, I don't think so. Thank you. But anyway, my boyfriend was like, I ain't locked no damn door. Like the tough guy he is. No, I'm kidding, but like, for real. But he was like, I ain't locked no damn door. Get out of here with that. So like I said, I feel like maybe if I was standing next to him, he wouldn't have thought that he was the girl's boyfriend. Or who knows, maybe he still would have, like, you know? But it's like, how? Like, I don't know if I could even have an opinion on this. Like, I'm not really sure. And I'm not trying to be offensive in any way, shape, or form. Because, like I said, I have no idea what it feels like to be discriminated in this way. So, all I'm saying is, why are you sitting here and telling everybody that you're so mad because you're being discriminated against? And then turn around and then start discriminating my man and acting like he's here with another girl just because she's Hispanic. Like, no, he's with me. He's with me. Like, what the I don't know. I just want to hear your guys' opinion. Like, what would you get mad at that? Like, if your boyfriend I'm sorry, was being called Mexican when he's Guatemalan and being accused of something solely because he's Hispanic as well, like, girl, tell me you wouldn't be mad too.
Story time on how my husband slept with my daughter. Okay, so boom, let's get right into it. So I'm 38 and I'm married to my husband who is 40. I have a daughter who's 16, but it was from a previous marriage and not my current husband. We currently don't have any kids together. Well, I like to say my relationship with my daughter is healthy, but she's very spoiled. I try to set boundaries and work ethic into my daughter, but my husband always gets in the way of that and ends up making me do whatever my daughter says. At first, I thought it was just my husband really stepping into that stepfather role, but then it became weird. My husband and daughter would plan things without me and be gone for long periods of time. My daughter started being really mean to me and tells me how I'm old and she's young and full of life. My husband would never defend me when I would tell my daughter that's wrong for her to say. After all the sneaking and weird behavior, I decided to set my husband and daughter up. I promise you, what I found out was the last thing I could have ever imagined. Part 2 on how my husband slept with my daughter. Okay, so boom, like I said, after all the sneaking and weird behavior, I decided to set my husband and daughter up to see exactly what's going on. I placed cameras in my room and my daughter's room, plus the kitchen and living room. I told my husband and daughter that I'll be going to visit my mom for 3 days who lived an hour away. And of course, they both declined to go with me. Y'all, I kid you not. Barely even an hour after I left, there it was in my living room camera. My husband and daughter watching a movie making out. Then my daughter hops on the top and they remove clothing. And I think you can see where it went from there. I was in so much shock and anger. I was crying, man. My emotions were all over the place. I called my ex-husband, the father of my daughter, and he came under 10 minutes. We both barged into the house where my current husband and daughter were still engaging in crazy activity. And it got crazy after this. Like for part 3 on how my husband slept with my daughter. Okay, so boom, like I said, we both barged into the house where my current husband and daughter were still engaging in crazy activities. My ex-husband took our daughter and started beating her with a belt. Then he screamed at her to go upstairs and put some clothes on, which she did. And then there was my current husband, crying, curled up on the floor, completely undressed, might I add, begging my ex-husband not to hurt him or call the cops. He had the audacity to tell us that our daughter was the one who came on to him. Yes, my daughter was the one on camera who initiated everything. That was clear as day. But you as an adult who is married should know better than to partake in anything with a minor, let alone your wife's child. I got a divorce immediately, but unfortunately my husband faced no jail time. And since my daughter wanted to be grown and follow him and tell me she hates me and that's why I can't keep a husband, both me and her father disowned her. She can go be grown on her own. Karma came pretty quick because he ended up passing away from an illness, and he cheated and had a baby with another woman while with my daughter, who also had a kid by him. It was just embarrassing and messy. My daughter begged for my forgiveness, but I just couldn't do it. She's okay with her dad now, but my daughter having a kid and my grandchild with my ex-husband is just something I currently can't get past. What do you think? Am I wrong for that? Should I give my daughter a second chance? Comment below.
Story time about the girl who faked assault for attention. So a little background information, I was 15 and it was my sophomore year of high school. So we're gonna call this girl Carly. Well, every week this girl would come in with some sort of bruise or cut on her. Me being a decent human being, I would ask her what happened. Well, every week she would either say that somebody beat her up or she was SA'd by this one guy who took a video of them while they were doing the nasty. But you could completely tell that it was not against her will. Well, everybody would believe her because always believe the victim. Well, the same thing happened again with a different boy. Everybody saw the video, and I'm talking like people from different schools. So it got into a routine of her telling us how she would have to get abortions every month. So fast forward, I head to my first class of the day, which was English. Well, I look over at her because she sits right next to me, and I see a huge bruise on her neck. Like it looked like somebody had been choking her. Now, her and I weren't in the same friend group, but we were kind of friends. So I lean over and ask her what happened. Like for part 2. Part 2 about the girl who faked assault for attention. So like I said, we were sitting in English class and I look over at her and she has this big bruise on her neck and it looked like somebody choked her. So I leaned over to her and I asked her what happened, and she said the guy who was in the video with her, the most recent video, he SA'd her. So I told her to come to the bathroom with me before the bell rang. So we go in and I immediately grab a paper towel and put it under some water with some soap, and I go to put it on her neck. And she starts screaming and like ducking and swerving. Well, I ended up swiping her neck with the paper towel. And there is makeup all on this paper towel. And the bruise is just like smudged all over her neck. So I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? She told me not to tell anyone. And that was her way of making friends. Even though this girl had plenty of friends. So when we got back to class, the bruise had a completely different shape. And she changed her story to me beating the shit out of her in the bathroom because she slept with my non-existent boyfriend. 3 years later, she is still doing the same exact shit.
This is going to be a story time of my experience with vaping. When I was around 15 years old, I got introduced to vaping, and at the time I didn't understand the harm vaping nicotine could cause. I got influenced to start doing it by everyone around me who was doing it, including my friends, people at school, and my family. As time went on and I kept vaping almost every single day for over a year, I started to realize how addicting vaping nicotine actually was, and that's when things started going downhill. Vaping started negatively affecting my health, especially my mental health. I began to rely on it to make me happy, and when I didn't have it, I would feel agitated and irritable and get really bad mood swings up until I was able to get access to it again. The only way that I was able to cope with these mood swings